Hi, I'm Roberta Glass, and today we're going to be talking about what Wild Wild Country can teach NXIVM followers.
Yeah, what's interesting about this story is you have the idealism of this cult. They purchased 60,000 acres of land, and they're going to build the ultimate city in their minds. And when I started finding out about it, I found myself really rooting for them. You know, this is happening in the early 80s. The Jonestown Massacre has just happened. The world is terrified of cults. The small town in Antelope nearby is thinking, we don't want these people in our town, but these are some of like the brightest young minds. They hire brilliant engineers from all over the world. They're doing groundbreaking technology with solar power, and unfortunately, you know, as is wont to happen then and still now, when you start to fear the other and the unknown, a war starts to build between this conservative small town of Antelope and this sort of revolutionary new way of living of the Rajneeshis.
That was executive producer Mark Duplass from Wild Wild Country talking about the Rajneesh Purim, which was the Bhagwan Rajneesh's cult that took place in Oregon from 1981 to 1985. And when I first listened to or watched Wild Wild Country, I didn't know, I had followed the Rajneeshis. I had had a camp counselor he was a Rajneeshi. I had asked him a lot of questions about it. He had lived on the ranch with his daughter, who has since gone on to write some really interesting articles and blogs about it. But I knew at maybe like 12, I guess I was 11, 12, 13, that the Rajneeshi was a con man. It didn't take, a lot of life experience to know someone with 96 Rolls Royces who claimed he was the spiritual master, that there was something wrong with it. And I would ask him questions like, well, why did he have so many Rajneeshis? Why did he have so many Rolls Royces? And my camp counselor, he was a camp counselor, he wasn't my camp counselor. He was still a devotee at that time. He was still wearing the red garments, and he had the mala hung up in his bunk and everything. And he would say, I said, why did they have so many why did he have so many Rolls Royces? And he would say, oh, it was a joke. And I found that really an unsatisfactory answer. And I was amazed that he was still a follower. So I always thought he was a little foolish, even at that age. But when Wild Wild Country came out, and I'd read a lot about it before seeing the documentary, when it came out, I got increasingly more uncomfortable as episode by episode went on, trying to come to terms with what I knew about the cult and what was being presented. And what was being presented, and you can see by Mark Duplass's answer, that it was really kind of like the town's fault equally for not understanding the specialness of the Rajneeshis and for panicking. But you have to understand that the Rajneeshis wanted to put in a city in a area that they did not have the right kind of permits for. It was completely incompatible with the land was completely incompatible with putting a city together. And instead of saying, oh, well, never mind, we'll look for another place, because they had tons of money, they dug in their heels and tried to take over the government. They poisoned the town. And they could have bought another property. They could have left that property as a kind of smaller retreat, but they didn't. They were just obsessed with bending the town to their will. And the property itself had a crematorium, it had a medical clinic, and there were incidences where, and also what they don't tell you is that when Sheila, who is really is painted as the villain of the piece, like it was all her idea where the Rajneeshi were in silence. Let me ask people who are listening right now, how often in your life have you worked for a company where the people on the bottom are doing things to benefit the people at the top, breaking the law without the people on the top's knowledge? How often has that happened? Or how often, don't even make it breaking the law, How often are the people on the bottom doing things to benefit in secret the people on the top without their knowledge? I mean, in my life, that has never happened. But let me know in the comments if that's something that you've experienced. But you see that a lot in these kind of narratives, that all this illegal stuff was done behind his back and he didn't know anything about it. So anyway, so that is their kind of liberal idea. We're going to kind of balance both sides. But one side is a dangerous cult, and I don't care how narrow-minded you are, who armed themselves, poisoned people, attempted to kill members of the government, and the other side is trying to push against it legally. I don't understand how those two are equal. But what you didn't see, and I think what's important to note, is this.
Has predicted that 2/3 of the world's population will perish from AIDS. Because the seething sexual pot at the ranch could easily become a focus of the disease, the ashram has decreed that all sexual contact be protected by these rubber gloves and condoms. For many of the children at the ashram, it will be too little, too late.
I am very concerned about the abuse of children at Rajneeshpuram. For instance, the young girls who are encouraged to get sterilizations is a very exploitative, abusive practice. Some of the girls that were in between 13 and 15 years old, Sheila would ask them if they would please be sterilized because they were more susceptible to sex. A lot of the girls would be called in from work to be fit for a diaphragm. And like Kiana's 10 years old, she had one. Sanal, who's 13, had one.
Their sex with the younger children is, one case in particular was a girl who was 13 years old. She had slept with guys, one was 45, one was 32. And one of the guys said she wasn't bad for a little kid, you know.
So once again, we have underage sexual exploitation of minors going on in a cult. And in the rewriting of the cult, it's completely taken out. And I think this is an important thing to note for people like me and my listeners who are watching NXIVM. And so often the child trafficking under 14 is just left out. And Keith Raniere's history of pedophilia is left out of the story. And I think we can expect what I like to call the specialness excuse. And Vanessa Grigoriadis has already started with this, saying people got so much out of it, the members were so interesting, Keith Raniere had such good ideas that help people, that this excuses the exploitative nature of the cult. And you will always have apologists. And if you look at any Rajneeshi video, there will always be devotees, who are still devotees, who say, Sheila did it all, and the Rajneesh knew nothing about it. She was an evil woman, and Americans were just too close-minded to understand his brilliance. And the progressive or left-wing filmmakers kind of buy into that because they hear conservative small town and they jump right on the witch hunt. It was a witch hunt against these people. No matter how crazy it got, no matter how many crimes the Rajneeshi commit, it somehow was a reaction to the members of the town, the persecution of the conservative small town. And that is ridiculous. So I think we can expect this in the months to follow, and even after the court date, even, after the trial is over. I think we can expect NXIVM apologists to try to rewrite the whole history of NXIVM and say that Keith Raniere was just a genius and the government found him too powerful. This is what I think Keith Raniere is telling himself. Too powerful, too effective. He wanted to liberate women, and the government wasn't into that, so they had to imprison him like he's a political prisoner. And anytime you hear someone call this branding a tattoo or this cult a self-empowerment group, stop it right there. I had no idea when I started recording audio for YouTube how similar these true crime cases would be, and how similar these documentaries would be. That the victim is really portrayed as the victimizer, and that the victimizer is portrayed as a victim of an unjust, either an unjust legal system or a small-minded community. I mean, how similar is this to the West Memphis 3? I think someone just tweeted that that this is progressive panic, which is something I've never heard before. That's a new that my belief in the West Memphis 3's guilt is progressive panic, and doesn't have anything to do with me reading the case files or the court documents. It's really an epidemic that's going on, where we are blaming victims and making victimizers heroes. And when Mark Agnifilo, the defense attorney for Keith Raniere, says the Department of Justice has made itself the morality police, doesn't that sound exactly like the filmmakers of Wild Wild Country? The people of Antelope didn't really understand these special people with their free sexuality. Who are they to be the morality police? And if you don't think all cults are alike, listen to this and tell me what this reminds you of.
Rajneesh. Chief exponent of the Rajneesh legal philosophy is Swami Prem Naren. The Swami, formerly P.J. Tokes, was a partner in a politically powerful Los Angeles law firm. But as the #1 legal strategist for Rajneesh Foundation International, he directed an unrelenting attack on Antelope.
Right at the moment, I have 2 lawsuits pending against me. At one time, when I was mayor, during the period between March and June of 1982, there were 11 different litigations involving the Rajneesh and the city of Antelope. This was intolerable. There were only 45 people in Antelope when the Rajneeshis came, and our resources, our money, compared to their millions and millions of dollars, was simply inadequate. There was no way that we could stand up against that kind of harassment. We were simply wiped out.
That sounds an awful lot like NXIVM and their multiple lawsuits against enemies and tiring them out through the legal system, making them go broke through having to defend themselves. I mean, Scientology does the same thing. But if you hear anyone say that this one was really different, this guy really had something special, just pause a second and ask yourself, is it really so special? Is it really so different? Why are they leaving big pieces out? Their history out, in order to give a fair and balanced. Is that really fair and balanced? I'll see you back next time.